What is your best version? What is atonement? Have you ever asked, what is the best version of myself? It's natural to reflect on the happiest or most productive times of our lives. But what if the best version of yourself wasn't when everything was going right, but when everything was going to hell and you were getting your ass kicked? Why are the heroes in stories not those who were born with a silver spoon in their mouths? Why are they those people who were knocked down repeatedly, sometimes only picking themselves up from the dust because if they didn't, it's right there they would starve? All of us know challenge and adversity. Fewer of us know the silver spoons. We admire their strength and determination not to fall, like the closing words in Tennyson's poem, Ulysses. I'll let you look that one up. Do we love the hero for whom success comes easy, or the one who holds back nothing because there's nothing left to hold on to? When this life is done and we look back on it, will we judge ourselves by whether we won or lost, or in what we found within us that gave us the courage to try? Push to our breaking point shows us what we're made of, our character, our heart. This can be our finest moment, bringing out the best version of ourselves. If that's where our hardest won and greatest sense of achievements are we willing to return to the struggle to continue our evolution? Atonement. At some point, we grow tired of being judged according to our past, being around people who won't let us grow and evolve, who keep holding us back with stories of every mistake we made in growing up, who are quick to remind us of our failures more than our successes. The past is dust. How else can you grow or atone but by making better choices in the present as the future unfolds into the now? In trying to do better, we reduce the number of actionable probabilities to choose from, which mercifully blinds us to other unfortunate ones. We may still make wrong decisions, but they don't have to be bad ones. A mistake is not necessarily a sin. The need to atone is the need to evolve. This usually surfaces in our need to return again and again for whatever reason to experience the joys and sorrows that can only be experienced here. But it's like the Uncle Remus story of the tar baby. Once you touch it, you can't untouch it. You're stuck to it. So how do we break that chain? Ultimately, when our sense of detachment includes any sense of self. Like a drop of water following the river, returning to the ocean to become oblivious to its individuality, to become so present that time ceases to exist, including past and future. In the Bible, it says that God himself will wipe away the tears. No retribution or atonement. While we get to this point, we just need to live long enough helping each other and putting no new stones in someone else's path. Whatever you think about his divinity when asked about healing all the sick and dying, Jesus just said sickness and death have always been here and always would be. That's the way this world is. It's not perfect. So no, he told the zealots, he wasn't going to kick out the Romans because it really wouldn't fix anything. He wasn't here to fix the world. He was here to fix them. All of them. Being authentic. Even atheists can be spiritual. It's interesting that when you stress test something, you find out what you really have. Tests do it with our retention and analytical thinking. Disaster response does it for testing preparedness for emergencies, fire drills and all that. Failover testing in data centers help us beef up our business continuity strategies. And sometimes an argument in a romantic relationship tells you whether it's more based on Saturday night than Monday morning. As the fallout from this past year of high emotion settles and we adjust our response to an ongoing COVID-dominated world, opposing positions expressed as all or nothing in every type of media from television news spin to the social media compliance and cancel culture, have been surprising. These extremely opposite positions are usually what people fall back to in emergency situations, real or not, and stress is off the charts. When the house is on fire, you focus on getting out rather than discussing on how to proceed. Long-range strategic thinking gives way to immediate tactical response. In such a mental state, untrained people aren't always at their best. The sharper the polarity of choices, the more they narrow, and the higher stakes if you make a wrong decision. And that's what panic is. I've been in enough earthquakes that I know when to worry and when not to. The last one I was in, believe it or not, was in Secaucus, New Jersey, probably about almost 10 years ago. I was working in an office complex, and for some reason that day I grabbed a small empty private office near the front door. During my work, I felt that slight tremor of a very small quake and immediately knew that in a few minutes everyone would be pouring out of the building into the plaza outside. So I saved my work, put my laptop in my bag, and while everyone was asking what happened, I went outside and waited for everyone to show up. It took about 10 or 15 minutes before I saw anyone else, but eventually they all did come. The most remarkable thing about the event to me was a very well-dressed man who I knew pretty well, who walked up to a group of his friends mopping his brow with a paper towel, and he said he was having trouble breathing. I asked, because of this? And he goes, yes. Well, I don't want to say anything to make him feel bad, but I realized just how close to the wire, to panic, people might be. I admired his honesty, but wondered if he felt that comfortable in his admission to think that many others would also mirror that response. Still, it was an eye-opener. I've seen other people in situations where some ambiguity increased and they also began freaking out, to the point of hysteria even. I honestly can't fathom it, except to say that perhaps some people are just born that way and others are conditioned through experience. And then I've seen others who could stay calm in a storm at sea. They just calmly dealt with whatever came up and didn't seem fazed at all. They might be focused, so unable to have much of a conversation, but the few things they said were amazing. My mother, for instance, and I referenced this instance earlier, when my father died, I swear she went into battle mode. Within a few hours, we had together visited the funeral home, and while waiting for someone to show up for the cemetery plot, I asked her how she could remain so calm. We can cry later, she said. She continued through the day executing everything that is probably in some book somewhere on what to do on the first day of someone's death, but it was all instinct for her, and I was in awe. Still am. I'm talking about these things today because I see where they meet in our current events. The conclusion I've come to allows another insight into why it is good to avoid a dual mind when possible and stick to the area in between this or that. I wrote in my book, The In-Between, A Journey of a Lifetime, that after my near-death experience, I was aware that while God wants to have a relationship with us, He doesn't force us into one. If we want to ignore Him and pretend He doesn't exist, well, our lifespans are so cosmically short that if He waits for a moment, we'll be back and the truth will be self-evident. What's the big deal? If we're right and there is a God, He's not the type who's going to rub your nose in anything. And if we're wrong and this is all there is, well, there's not going to be anyone there to do the rubbing. I also felt the truth of you can't row in two boats at once. That if someone were talking to God about their choices, they may well say how they want to live a questionable life because they like the cars, the money, the women, and the power, clothes. I think in such a conversation, as I've seen exemplified in life, God would just say, you have free will. You can make whatever decision you want. If that is what you really want to do, then go see how it works out for you. When you're done, come back. I'm not going anywhere. Extending this thought, I've come to believe that even if you're an atheist and you live your life authentically, then you are living it spiritually. It might be like the first rung, but if you can't be authentic, I don't see how you're going to be spiritual. There are many people who say they believe in God, but they don't live a life that I think demonstrates the choices or sacrifices you would expect if you were making the same declarations. And you don't have to look far to find any examples. But what about the people who do own their crap, who don't justify it or dismiss their bad choices offhandedly, but totally own who they are, warts and all? If you went up and said to them, hey, this is not so good, they'll go, yeah, you're right, and I'm working on that, or I'm trying to work on that. Man, I tell you, isn't that the kind of humility that makes that type of person worth learning from? Before anyone counters with a counter exaggeration asking how a child molester lives authentically and spiritually, let me say now that I'm thinking generally about people who may be different or even quirky, but pose no threat to the physical safety or mental health of our society. People who can actually function in society, but may not have the same views we have, religious, political, sexual, business, and so on. How unusual is it to be challenged about something in their behavior and with a disarming authenticity, acknowledge it, and confirm it needs further work? That's like winning an argument, something else you hardly ever experience. For me, I would rather know where you stand and hear you own your faults than have the same issue hide behind religion or even a socio-political doctrine, even if it's my own. I will appreciate your honesty, and I may even feel solidarity with you. Like you said before, in the hero's journey, we all know adversity. You're also setting an example for countless people who have the courage to address their own shortcomings and get to work. There are more people watching you than you know, and therefore you can help more than you can guess. Living authentically really does go back to Socrates saying, "Man, know thyself." This is why I've told my kids not to ask, "Where is my perfect girlfriend or my perfect boyfriend?" but ask instead how they need to be loved. Don't ask what you should do for a living, but ask what makes me happy and fully engaged, instead of what is my purpose in life. Ask what the meaning of life is as you see it, and then back that into the question of what your unique purpose is, given your unique interests and abilities. Just take a chance of looking at yourself. Are there consistent patterns or self-sabotage you engage in? Does someone in particular bring out the worst in you? Do you leave other people feeling bad about the things you said or did? Try some 20/20 hindsight here, and even if for only 5 minutes, be honest with yourself. Since none of us are perfect, honest self-reflection will reveal ways in which we can do better, and that is thinking authentically. Put this knowledge into practice, maybe first in avoiding situations and people that bring out the worst in you, then trying different approaches to survive such encounters that don't turn you from Mr. Hyde to Dr. Jekyll. Do that, and while you struggle to do so, you will be living authentically. Is it more important where you begin or where you end? Living authentically, you'll stop asking if things are the journey or are the destination. You'll see they're both. Saving the world starts at home, at the kitchen table, on the knee of a parent, or at the feet of a grandparent. Then it grows into living a life in the spirit of service to others, no matter your job or career. Doing the things that make you feel connected to other people, sometimes helping those less fortunate or even more fortunate who may benefit from your guidance. Sometimes leading from behind, allowing others to think it was their idea. Sharing the spotlight whenever possible, for no one got where they are alone. It's been said that when the student is ready, the teacher appears. How do you know when you're ready? Many are those who say, "Show me the way." But there are few who say, "Please take me by the hand, lead me as if I'm blind, because in truth I am." It should be clear to anyone that those who only want to be shown the way are still too proud to be led. Their ego isolates them from the truth. And that's why the world has always been imperfect and always will be. Again, we can't really save the world. We can only hope to save ourselves. If you think you can save anyone else, try treading water while pushing someone out of it into the lifeboat. You'll quickly realize that you need to first get yourself into the lifeboat, and that pulling them out of the water is a lot easier than pushing them when you have no footing yourself. And that might require taking a hand that's being offered to you. So think about that. The readiness for a teacher is grounded in humility. To finally come to a crossroads where the luster of the world has paled, that no fine food can satisfy your hunger, and that no amount of alcohol can get you drunk enough to see overindulgence to excess, now eating those who consume them. That is the time to take the bread of the powerful and the weak, to squeeze one and then the other, and see from which pours blood and which pours milk. That is seeing things as they are. Then it is time to just let go entirely of this place and realize it's always been about the drug we call intensity. What is it that we think we know, we yearn to know, and we're dying to know? For those choices you made in the past and set the present in motion, deal with their results the best you can in accordance with some moral compass. And when your final day comes, just let it all go. Hang on to nothing. Everything you thought you were, everyone you thought you loved and who loved you, will be left behind. Then you return to full memory of who you were before you were born and the millions of lives and relationships you've had and their individual importances, especially the ones in which you began to remember. The chapter in which you woke up and began your epic journey home. I want to wrap up with some thoughts and reflections on prayer. I hear a lot of people talk about it, and I don't know, have some interesting reactions, so I wanted to share them with you. During my near-death experience, I was shown the clock-like accuracy of the workings of destiny, mine anyway. And when I asked about where or when these events were that I was removing, I was told that it was not important that I know. It was important that I see how things adjusted as a result of my cleaning up my future to make fewer bad decisions. I was being told to trust in God, His plan, and the grand design. With that, and as if by instinct, I don't pray anymore. Not from a lack of respect, but as an act of faith, of living a life of praying ceaselessly. I never pray at all. If you give up all the things that most people pray for, truly detach from them, you can't help but live a life of praying ceaselessly because you're in tune. And many prayers for the things of this world would be better replaced with a single prayer that our will simply fold into God's. That's the main axis of accepting God's will, that the up and down sine wave of what we want and what we want to avoid undulates above and below, and only for the briefest moment touches. When you hear of the many worldly things people pray for, you wonder how much they have forgotten in how, as children of God, weren't we imbued with not just a fraction of God, but all of Him? Isn't it a crisis of faith if we think we need to remind Him we're about to run out of food or money for the mortgage? Doesn't He know that? Do we actually have to ask the all-knowing for the obvious, or He won't know? If He really knows when a single sparrow falls, then He knows when we need to make our rents and mortgages. And where is this God we think we have to pray to? Isn't His ear closer than our tongues are to our own palates? Clearly, people worship different gods, partly because He's been over-personalized. The latest class on the law of attraction isn't a class on how to pray to get you what you want. It's how to yourself live a life that draws to you the manifestation of your desires. I'm no more a practitioner of that for the way it is represented than I am on my knees praying in temples. But one thing such a class does get right is that you have everything already within you to manifest whatever you want. You have, you do, and you will. Quantum mechanics says that the mere act of observing an experiment influences its outcome. Some of the tests are pretty complex to explain, but the implications are astounding. Whether a tree makes a sound or not when it falls in the woods, if a person is or isn't there, is pretty much where quantum physics begins. And since time is an illusion, it's fair to say that every thought, word, and action since the beginning of time is still echoing around the world. Similarly, for every person who works toward being able to actually converse with God will find that every man since Adam is ready to help. And people who would kill will find every hand since Cain is ready to assist in that as well. There are echoes of every other good and bad action in between, suspended as quantum probabilities all around us ready to be chosen, and supported by the echoing thoughts and actions from the beginning of time of every son of Adam and every daughter of Eve. So why do you need to pray? What you want is merely a matter of choice. Whether it is a prayer to God or the direction of your will, just make your choices good and worthwhile, and be of one mind. He who does not have a temple in his heart will never find his heart in any temple. In love and respect, don't take to God your countless fears and desires. Don't ask him to open for you the locked or invisible doors. Ask him where he hid the keys, and he will show you within your own heart and minds how to be a conscious co-worker of the divine creation. In the vastness of your hearts is found the key to every door, and in the vastness of the heart are all the things to pray for, whether good or bad. So if you pray, do so in a way that brings you into perfect harmony with whatever you pray for. Be clear and of one mind about it. You need no lip or tongue for praying. You need a silent, wakeful heart. I've mentioned how understanding gives rise to meaning and usually works in that order. So pray for understanding. The key to life is the Word of God, many times heard within as a very high-frequency sound. The key to the Word is love, and the key to love is understanding. Focus on these and just let go of the rest. I'd like to end this with a short passage from a book I've found to be very inspirational, the Book of Mirdad by Mikhail Naimi. Spare your tongues the pain of many words, and save your minds the weight of many prayers, and free your hearts from bondage to all gods who would enslave you with a gift, who would caress you with one hand only to smite you with the other, who are content and kindly when you praise them, but wrathful upon reproach, who would not hear you save you call, and would not give you save you beg, and having given you, too often regret the giving, whose incense is your tear, and whose glory is your shame.